Chapter 39, The Spatial Ring. This chapter is updated by novels.pl. In Zhang Yuoquan's last lifetime, he had seen a treasure called the Xumi primordial bag. It seemed to be only a palm-sized bag, yet it was able to store an entire mountain. The Xumi primordial bag was classified as a highly precious treasure. There were less than 10 pieces in all of Kunlun's field. It was said that it had been passed on since the medieval ancient times and was refined and worshipped by a saint. Many of the weapon refiners always wanted to counterfeit the Xumi primordial bag. Not a single person had succeeded. In Zhang Yuoquan's previous life, he was Emperor Ming's son. He was well educated and had a broad knowledge of the world. Hence, he knew that treasures like the Xumi primordial bag existed. Opening an independent space inside the ring. Isn't that the same characteristic as the Xumi primordial bag? Zhang Yuoquan was shocked by its function. The giant black cat said, the Xumi primordial bag is a space treasure refined by Saint Monk Xumi. I'm sure there will only be a few pieces left through the progress of passing on the space treasure until this era. Each of them is extremely valuable. I can't believe that the Xumi primordial bag was refined by Saint Monk Xumi. Well, I also want to try refining a space treasure with my capability. Zhang Yuoquan was excited. He thought that if he could refine and produce space treasures, by then he could sell them at a very costly price and the profit would be used to buy more spiritual pills for his cultivation. He gripped the inscription pen hard and transferred and implanted the genuine chi from his body into the inscription pen. The inscription pen instantly displayed a white splendor. A gleam of white light extended from the top of the pen and entered the jade thumb ring. Zhang Yuoquan paid full attention to control the inscription pen and carved the base of the inscription of space inside the jade thumb ring. Drawing the inscription was a task that required extreme meticulousness and consumed a lot of spiritual power. Boom! The first inscription had been successfully carved. Zhang Yuoquan did not stop but kept up the good work. Shortly after, he had finished the second inscription, the third inscription, the fourth one, the fifth one, the sixth one. When Zhang Yuoquan finished carving all 6 inscriptions, there was a layer of a light halo displaying on the surface of the jade thumb ring. A strand of the white inscription was flowing around the thumb ring. Soon, the halo disappeared and the white inscription penetrated into the thumb ring. Have I made it? Zhang Yuoquan wondered. In order to clarify it, he immediately transferred a streak of genuine chi into the jade thumb ring. On the jade thumb ring's surface, there was a layer of halo and gleams of the white inscription. Zhang Yuoquan touched the ring and felt like his entire arm had entered the ring. I made it. The area inside the jade thumb ring is 1 cubic meter large. Within the spatial ring, it contains 6 streaks of the inscription, which classifies as a third-class genuine martial arm, said an ecstatic Zhang Yuoquan. Bear in mind that this was his first time refining a spatial ring and he had successfully made it. The giant black cat said, don't be overjoyed with your little achievement. You've only learned how to carve 6 basic types of inscriptions of space, yet you're still unable to control the size of the space when you refine it. Wait until you learn how to carve the remaining 2 inscriptions, the inscription of strain type and the inscription of condensing. Then the space that you refine in the spatial ring will definitely larger than 1 cubic meter. Moreover, what you have done is to carve the inscription on the jade thumb ring. The inscription is not solid enough. It will probably dispel with a slight bump. What you have to do is to utilize the method of refining weapons. By worshipping the spatial ring with fire, it empowers the inscription on the spatial ring. However, if you fail properly to manage the heat, you will probably destroy the spatial ring. The giant cat expressed a certain level of seriousness. Zhang Yuoquan nodded and said, I get it. I'll head to the Federation of Inscription and borrow the weapon refining stove from Zuoen and, hopefully, I can fully refine the spatial ring. Wait. I'm going with you. PHHHF. The giant black cat thrust its feet and flew out from the internal space of the time and space spinal. Looking at the giant black cat who stood in Zhang Yuoquan's room, Zhang Yuoquan furrowed his eyebrows and decided to put it back into the yin-yang wooden graph. Such a tricky cat could see through what Zhang Yuoquan had in mind. He lay on the ground and cried, young man, I have been imprisoned in the yin-yang wooden graph for more than 100,000 years. Though I have made massive mistakes, All these years I have atoned for my sins. I'm only a cat. I'm longing for freedom, longing for a brand new life. Mew. Besides, I am the one who guided you to open up the chakras. Without my help, do you think you will be able to refine the spatial ring? Considering that it had helped Jiang Yuochen to break through the chakras, he said, okay, I'll let you stay outside of the yin-yang wooden graph for the time being. But, you have to stay next to me the entire time. Of course. The giant black cat rolled on the ground with excitement. Suddenly, Jiang Yuochen heard footsteps outside his room. My ninth brother, are you still secluding yourself for refining? It was the ninth commandery Princess Jiang Yuxi's voice. Jiang Yuochen opened the door and left the room. He looked at the ninth commandery princess who waited outside his room and asked, my ninth sister, what can I help you with? The ninth commandery princess was beautiful today. She was carrying a sword in forest green, wearing a silver silk-pleated dress with her shiny black hair rolled up on the top of her head as well as a green belt tied around her tiny waist. She was so excited when she saw Jiang Yuochen. I heard that your cultivation has reached the medium state of the yellow realm. Therefore, I want to fight with you as a form of practice. It had been less than 2 months since the year-end assessment. She could never foresee that Jiang Yuochen had not only broken through to the medium state, but had also reached the final state. Jiang Yuochen asked, I guess my ninth sister has also made some improvements and reached the final state of the yellow realm? She slightly shook her head and said, me? It's not easy to reach the final state of the yellow realm. I'm only at the peak of the medium state. But, I've practiced my sword comprehension to the realm of sword following the heart. I think that even though I haven't yet reached the final state, I'll be able to defeat warriors in the final state. Jiang Yuochen nodded his head in consent. It was indeed hard for warriors who reached the realm of sword following the heart at such a young age. In fact, both the ninth commandery princess and Lin Ningshan had just reached the initial stage of the sword following the heart. Yet, Jiang Yuochen had made it to the advanced stage of the sword following the heart and was thus beyond comparison. With any random sword technique, Jiang Yuochen would easily defeat them. He responded to Jiang Yuxi's request, but I don't have time to practice with you now. I need to head over to the Federation of Inscription. Never mind, I can go with you. Let's take my Cloud Rabbit Lunar Rover. Her eyes glittered. It seemed that the ninth commandery princess just wanted to spend time with Jiang Yuochen rather than practice martial arts with him. Then, she walked toward Jiang Yuochen and held his arms as if she was not evasive to demonstrate a sense of intimacy. Jiang Yuochen looked a bit shy. Although they were brother and sister of different mothers, they were still attached by the blood of the same father. Soon after, he got more comfortable with it. Mew. The fat black cat walked out of Jiang Yuochen's room casually as if it had gone for a walk. At the moment, the cat's size had been greatly minimized compared to its original size. It was just a bit bigger than a normal cat. My ninth brother, you have a cat. It's so adorable. What's its name? The ninth commandery princess lifted the cat up and touched its skin softly. Mew. The fat black cat pretended to behave itself. It rolled its eyeballs, stuck its tongue out, and licked the fingers of the ninth commandery princess slightly. Jiang Yuochen glanced at the cat, shook his head and said, just call it Blackie. Blackie. She stretched out her finger and moderately patted Blackie's head. She could not imagine how angry it was to be called Blackie as it once was king of slaughter in its previous life. That is such an offense to me. It's definitely an insult. Fine. I'll just tolerate him. If I don't behave myself, he will send me back into the wooden graph, Blackie thought. Riding on the ninth commandery princess carriage, Jiang Yuochen arrived at the Federation of Inscription again. He borrowed the weapon refining stove from Zuoen in order to refine and worship the spatial ring. The process of worshipping the spatial ring went unexpectedly well. Soon after, the first spatial ring had been produced and turned out as an actual product. A third-class genuine martial arm, the spatial ring. Zuoen stood aside observing the process of refining. He whispered while observing Jiang Yuochen, the ninth prince is definitely an inborn master of refining weapons. It's his very first time to refine a weapon and he is able to control the heat with such an amazing technique. This is no doubt admirable. Jiang Yuochen did not act arrogantly, but asked Zuoen with courtesy, with my control over the heat, which class do you think my technique in terms of a weapon refiner is? The peak of a first-class weapon refiner. Zuo-en continued, be mindful. This is your first time worshipping a genuine martial arm and you've already fully shown your talent. I believe that you will reach the second class of a weapon refiner very soon. Being a second-class weapon refiner could enjoy a superior status in Yunwu Commandery. Moreover, if weapon refiners were willing to rely on a particular sect or a large-scale family, they could immediately enjoy the same treatment as a presbyter, or a status even more superior than a normal presbyter. My spiritual power has reached the third class of a weapon refiner. Yet, my control over the heat is still not on point. Therefore, I can only classify myself as a second-class weapon refiner. Zuo-en groaned. The spiritual power of a first-class weapon refiner was usually between level 15 to 20. For a second-class weapon refiner, it was between the levels 20 to 25. For a third-class weapon refiner, it was between level 25 to 30. Last but not least, the spiritual power of a fourth-class weapon refiner was between levels 30 to 35. The most senior master weapon refiner in Yunwu Commandery was Kong Tong, who was a fourth-class weapon refiner. Her spiritual power had reached level 34 and thus was called a master of spiritual power in Yunwu Commandery. Her status in Yunwu Commandery was more or less the same as Yunwu Commandery Prince. If Yunwu Commandery Prince wanted her to refine his weapons, he had to visit her in person. He had to negotiate with her in a fair and equal manner, because she was not only a fourth-class weapon refiner, but also chief of the Federation of Inscription in Yunwu Commandery. Her status was extremely magnificent. Zuo-en asked with curiosity, my ninth prince, what exactly is the thumb ring that you're refining? Is it a kind of defensive genuine martial arm? Zhang Yuochen smiled and said, well, let's keep that a secret for the time being. Shortly after, he left the weapon refining room. There was something bothering him in his mind, which was that he also wanted to buy a weapon refining stove. However, King Xuan Pavilion sold the best weapon refining stoves in Yunwu City. If Zhang Yuochen wanted to pay a visit to it, he had no choice but to encounter the attractive hostess who had the ability to steal men's souls. Qinya was a very coquettish, charming, and attractive woman, who took the initiative to seduce Zhang Yuochen. She would make him commit a crime. It gave Zhang Yuochen a headache when he thought of this. By encountering such a lovely woman, he wondered if there was any man who could control himself to not be dominated by her. If Yuxi goes with me, maybe the hostess will slightly behave herself. Zhang Yuochen finally thought of an idea to prevent himself from falling into the hostess' seduction.